What if your privacy was invaded? What if someone was coming after you and they knew exactly what to do to manipulate you, to make you into a victim? What if they were a serial killer? What if you couldn't get away? Join us. So I'm Dan.
And I'm Nick, folks.
We're old friends dissecting one topic at a time. People, technology, media, we've got it all covered.
Each discussion here is a deep dive into our unique perspective. The taboo, forbidden subjects, they're all on the chopping block, baby. We don't pander to popular opinion. We might even get a little bit dirty.
Warning, this podcast may contain mature language and sexual content, and is for infotainment purposes only.
So join us. Have a good time.
Open up your ear holes, because we're going to fondle your follicles.
Whoa! Oh my god. What an intro.
Got my heart going, really. I got nervous because I thought someone was following me.
This is weird. There's usually two of us.
Mm-hmm.
Are you?
There's someone watching us.
Gosh, we have a guest. This is crazy.
This is Amelia from AntiMatters.
Oh, a podcast we actually did a previous episode with?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Repeat guests. Uh-huh. How do you feel about that?
Thanks for having me back.
Welcome.
We actually heard you might make a great serial killer expert.
I would say so. I don't know if anybody else would say that. I don't know how you heard that on the grapevine.
A lot of rumors circulating around there. Troubled
need to
past.
lay low, I guess, because that's not something I want out there.
Well, don't take any 23andMe DNA tests. Let me just say that. We'll come back to that a little later.
Ship has sailed.
So,
serial
killers, huh?
Yeah.
That's the big one today, huh?
How does it all begin?
Listen,
mostly head injuries.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Overbearing mothers.
That's true too. So we're actually going to do one on serial killers. I didn't think this day would come, folks. But those of you who watch Criminal Minds or a third of the Law and Order episodes, maybe a fourth probably, all these great shows that we all love, we all get behind, and we all root for the bad guy. At least that's what I do. It's finally come. We're going to do one on serial killers, which, by the way, does anyone know the actual definition? I love definitions.
3 or more kills, right? Over a period of time? I don't know if it specifies how far apart they are.
I think it's just 2 or more.
2 or more?
Oh, you're both rightish. And there's no real set definition. It's the weirdest thing.
Huh.
It's a person who commits a series of murders, usually 3 or more, doesn't say always, often with no apparent motive, typically following characteristic predictable behavioral pattern that lasts over a month.
Over a month. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, it's called a cooling down period. Apparently, if you kill like 19 people in a row, that's a spree.
Mm-hmm.
You're not a serial killer. You're a killer spree guy.
Way less cool.
Garanga.
Way less cool.
Yeah.
You don't get to go to the club.
Mm-mm.
No coffee for you.
We're thumbs downing you, school shooters, which is a real problem and probably a future episode. But also, we're thumbs downing them. Don't come to my school or my work. But yeah, those are sprees. That's like a little different.
Yeah, it's almost
There's
like
actually a
crime of passion.
time where, crime of passion. I get a crime of passion. You're gonna kill like 40 people, but you're mad. Like that makes sense. You're gonna kill 40 people over 40 years and not get caught. That's terrifying.
There's something else going on in your brain. Yeah.
Hell of a lot.
You don't get really mad at one person once a year for 40 years.
Imagine. Sorry, Jim. This is the last croissant, but it looks like it's mine. Oh, Daryl, you're gonna pay. It's just like something at work that happened, sparks it. 9 months later,
the floor. He just like looks down. Can't believe.
I forget who was who, but Daryl's dead in 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
So?
that's a thing with psychopaths, though, right? They hold grudges like for extended periods of time. Like,
I would imagine.
I mean, for simple things like you said, taking the last croissant, they log that and they will get their revenge.
Like a book of notes on everyone they've ever been offended by.
Well, there's no way we can know who is ahead of time, right? Like, there's no like indicator. Do they wear a sign, a special T-shirt? Yeah, is there a T-shirt or something that they have to wear?
I go ahead and assume anybody who's like too nice is a psychopath.
Shit.
Like if I'm like shaking hands with someone, they've got like a really big toothy smile. I'm like, psychopath.
That makes sense.
So they
brown shoes with black pants. That might be a psychopath, or just someone who doesn't own brown shoes.
They've like learned to imitate real people with emotions, right?
Oh,
that's like
they're very good at it.
Yeah.
That's like the AI test. Like, what's the one word that confuses AIs? They fail the Turing test when people say
shit,
poop, because it makes people laugh. And a computer won't laugh; it'll just say poop.
Yeah. So you tell them, set it up better, because you can explain this to everyone.
It was like, what's the one word that throws off an AI when you're doing a Turing test? Like, if you say poop to an AI will just like acknowledge. It doesn't start laughing and cracking up.
But humans love it. Humans laugh every time. Poop.
So a psychopath. Yeah, a psychopath might not laugh at poop. I don't know. Test it out.
I think they've trained themselves. There's I can't remember his name, but there's a neuroscientist who did a bunch of research into psychopaths, and so he's looking at brain scans because apparently you can tell if somebody there's like a psychopath gene, and it shows up in brain scans. And he had his brain scan, and he was just like going through, and he's like, "Oh, that person's a psychopath." And then he looks down, and it has his name on it, and then he's like having to reevaluate his life, and he's like, "Well, I guess I am," because not all psychopaths, are serial killers or criminals. Right. They can be neuroscientists.
He was he the dude did a bunch of TED Talks and stuff? He has a name that's similar to a famous person's name.
Yeah, James Fallon.
Yeah, Jimmy Fallon. That's what I was thinking. Okay, cool. Then I did come across him. He did you do the whole talk with him?
Yeah.
Okay, because like it wasn't like his great grandfather, the first recorded history matricide. I think it was. Yeah. The first person to ever kill their own mother. Right? Did I just say it right? I don't even know if I got that right.
Yeah, it's matricide.
Okay, cool.
I know, and it's interesting because he was just talking about how he was reevaluating his life and looking at it differently. Like he's married and he has children, and everyone is like he went and said like, "Hey guys, I'm a psychopath." They're like, "Yeah, that makes sense." And
we get it. Like, we get it, Dad.
We know. Please don't kill us. But it's the same thing with like you can grow up and be normal because psychopathy is hereditary, but like you can like it can be fostered, or like there was I can't remember her name either, but there was a little girl who was adopted by a family.
Yeah, I came.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I did come across this story, and she ended up being like a serial killer. So it wasn't her upbringing. Is that the one you're talking about?
Oh, Child Full of Rage, Beth Thomas?
Yeah, but they got her as a child, and they did like therapy with her, and she didn't kill anybody.
Oh, no. No, mine was the opposite. Someone got adopted from some like family, and she became a serial killer, and it was like a regular family, and they were like, this never happened. She has a normal upbringing. She has brothers and sisters. We just adopted her. And they looked through her genealogy, and like her great grandfather was like someone who killed a whole bunch of people, and her uncle was someone who was in jail a lot and everything. And they're like, oh, well, maybe it is the genes. Like they're always arguing, is it nature versus nurture?
That's basically every serial killer ever, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
We don't know. We don't know, folks. Now, my research has me going to this next bullet point. Okay, you have to stay with me, gang. Okay.
Is it a big jump?
We're right here.
No, it's the last of my notes. I mean, this is it. Once we do this, I'm done the episode. I don't know if you guys were done. I don't know if we were going to keep going. I don't know if you guys wanted to get into specifics. I just figured I was going to float it from here on out. So why don't you give me this? Serial killer actually was a coined term in 1966-67. Wasn't used in law until 1974. They were called mass murderers at the time. Someone coined the term serial back then. And, they used it like sparingly here and there in like sciencey papers and whatever. Well, guess what? My man Wayne Williams started killing people in 1981. And the New York Times called it a serial killing. And that's where we've kept the word ever since. That 81 killing. Wayne Williams. Sounds like a good guy. I didn't Google his name.
Gotcha.
Dan's doing it now. I hope he is. Did you?
So what about Wayne Williams? What made him a serial killer?
I actually don't know. Can you fill me in? If my memory's foggy.
He was suspected of killing 23 people, but he was convicted of only 2.
That's usually how it works.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they confess to like most of the people confess to
14 or
dozens.
30.
Even if they find the bodies, they're like, "Oh, we convicted him on like a fraction of what he actually did."
2,
That's good.
4, yeah.
There
Weird.
was a guy I was just listening to recently. I think his name was Otis Toole, who confessed to over 100 murders, and most of that was just him seeking attention because he already been given the death penalty. But he could only actually be linked to like 5 or 6. He's the one who killed America's Most Wanted son, Adam Walsh. You guys remember that?
It was like the host's son.
Wait.
Like what?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he had a son. That's why he started all this. Adam Walsh disappeared as a little kid, and
Oh, I didn't know that actually.
That's crazy.
See that? So that's how America's Most Wanted started, huh? Revenge. It was a dish best served on live TV. Shout out. No, I guess you're absolutely right. It wasn't, but we do everything here live at the Unpanders, so that's why I like to think everyone else has that kind of gusto. I don't know if they do, but
victims of crimes.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's interesting because that makes me think of. Did you guys watch Mindhunter?
I did. That was the first time they tried to identify the traits of serial killers.
Yeah, like they were just coming up with this idea that people today I think take for granted because there's a character on that show who's he's like tickling children's feet.
Is that the same guy who liked women's shoes too?
No, that's Ed Kemper.
Okay.
This is just like a principal of a school.
Oh yeah, I remember this. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, and so this guy is going around like paying kids in candy to tickle their feet.
Did you guys watch the Ed Kemper serial killer thing that was just recently on TV?
Oh.
No.
Okay, it was on like Oxygen or one of those networks that's not like a big timer, right?
Of course it is.
And it was probably like an hour long or whatever. So get this, my sister's son, her oldest son, he's 4, or he was 4 at the time. He's 5-ish now. He'll be 5 soon. Anyway, I have a friend in like the showbiz, but like not really showbiz, like lower showbiz. He was like, "Do you know a kid who would play as a serial killer like as a child?" We got my nephew to do it, and he's in the actual show. So it's really cool because I think it was Ed Kemper, and
wow.
He's just supposed to sit in a chair in like this old timey looking clothes and play with his doll while he looks at it like this, while his parents are screaming in front of him. And then in one other scene, he was supposed to like play with a dead bird or something. And I was like, oof.
So that's the beginning of the serial killer.
Look at you, serial killer. Way to join the world, buddy. And he did get paid, for the record. I'm not allowed to say how much, but he got paid.
Nice.
Big time. He's like, he could go to Panera for a week straight, lunch for him and his mother, and then I mean they'd probably be done after that, but a week straight.
I mean, really, he's just gonna write off that notoriety for the rest of his life.
He might
get girls.
Hey, Ed Kemper as a kid? Yeah, yeah, that's me. Oh man, you were good. You were real good.
If it's old timey clothes though, and I assume that you don't mean like 70s as old timey.
Well, like I think it was like an overall type thing.
Gotcha.
Like it would look dated. Sorry, dated, not old timey. Dated. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I think old timey. I think like H.H. Holmes kind of stuff.
No, man, he was wearing a barrel with suspenders. Like that's what the poor folk did back then.
But to just circle back real quick, the tickling of the feet though is why it was interesting to me, because like that today, if you hear like some grown ass man is tickling a little kid's feet, you're like 1 million red flags. Let's stop
you're like,
this.
Let's check this out. Is it his kid? Yeah. Okay. Is it someone else's kid?
That's not normal.
I could tickle my kids' feet.
Other kids' feet?
Paying them in secrets and candy.
What? No, that's that. Oh, you're talking some red flags there.
The weird part of that show is that they didn't really convict that guy. They just kind of forced him into an awkward situation to make him stop, right?
Yeah, and he was outraged, and other people were like, "No, he's just like a really good guy." Because at the time, those things weren't red flags. Like I don't want to say take advantage. What's the word I'm looking for
He's
here?
The tickle monster.
Don't know better yet, I guess.
Yeah, and now we're like, well, duh. But then there's like, oh, he's just a chill dude. I'll send my kids over there to get tickled. I don't want to give them candy.
I guess that's a weird thing. Like, I guess, do you think like child molestation and stuff are like probably way more rampant in the 80s, right? Which is also, I'm just surmising it on being unreported, because The peak of serial killers, they surmise, was like the 1980s.
Serial
And I wonder if
killery.
They say the 1980s, really? I
don't
thought it
know.
was like
Yeah.
basically if you lived in the Northwest
Well,
in the 60s and 70s, the chances
from-
of getting raped or murdered were like really high.
Well, I think they had a graph. I love graphs, folks. It was from the 1900s on, the number of serial killers, and the number peaked in the 80s. Now, I don't know if that's the number of serial killings or killers, but maybe that's when notoriety is at its peak, but forensics and cameras everywhere is not. You know what I mean?
It's interesting that you say you have that graph because you said it was like 1981 or something where they were actually defining mass murderers as serial killers.
Mm-hmm.
So did they go back retrospectively and say that this person's a serial killer versus a mass?
Probably. That's true. And it was the hot word. It was the hot item right then.
I just mean like most of the cases I do, I've heard about where late 60s, 70s, free love, free murder kind of thing.
Well, fewer evidence, fewer technology, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And also free because, yes.
People were also just better at keeping secrets in the 70s.
I guess Facebook, maybe? I don't know.
But
do you think it would be easier to kill someone and hide the body in the 1960s than today? Let's be honest, guys.
So there's one guy, Gary Ridgway, which is the Green River Killer. He's like one of the most, not celebrated, but he was like one of the highest killers in the 1980s.
Celebrated. It's his birthday next week. We can't wait.
This guy, he would prey on people that were, I guess, they're toots, they're sex workers. So he'd pick them up, kill them, and then dump them on the side of the road. And he was, I think he was like, he would paint like tractor trailers. Like he would be like almost like a driver.
Like that was his job.
So he would like dump them in the woods along his route, and it was just bizarre because this guy was doing that through like 10 or 20 years. Like he was doing it for a really long time. He had like 50 kills, and he married like 3 women. Like those women didn't even know that he was doing this. He would just say, "I need to leave early for some overtime," and then kill them in the morning.
I mean, how many? I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty horrific, and I think that's like he obviously targeted sex workers, and he's not unique in that. I can't remember the guy's name, but there's one who was targeting sex workers and then brought them to their pig farm. Criminal Minds is an episode on him, and was feeding them their corpses to pigs. It's something that you can do, and I think that's why people why we've started calling prostitutes or whatever else you'd like to say as sex workers, because it's destigmatizing. And if you say prostitutes, then people can push them to the side. They're not as important. And so like removing that name says that, it's a genuine employment, and maybe that will stop these people from going missing for years at a time before someone investigates their.
I mean, the two are connected, though.
Yeah, like the
two are connected.
The weight of killing like 50 women versus killing 50 prostitutes. It's like it's psychologically it's different for the average person.
Yeah,
right.
If you say it exactly, if you say it like that versus, you just killed 50 women. I mean, that's not how they were advertising it though, because as a prostitute, in that terminology, you are less than a regular woman.
Well, it started with the OG, Jack the Ripper, right? We did an entire episode on him.
Mm-hmm.
His were ladies of the night, correct?
That's correct.
4 or 5 of them, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, they're the weakest link in society. They're protected the least. You know what I mean? So why wouldn't they prey on them? Isn't that one of the MOs of these serial killers? They prey on the weakest, whether it's children, old people, women, prostitutes. Like, do you know what I mean? Like they kind of go for whoever they can and figure they're going to get away with it the easiest.
Definitely. I mean, we've got like the Ken and Barbie killers, Paul Bernardo, when he was just known as the Scarborough rapist. He was doing young girls in college, people waiting at bus stops. You heard he killed one girl, raped one girl, who was locked out of her home for missing curfew.
Oh, that was creepy.
So like that's a perfect example of someone like who's actually like in the predator mode, looking for the weakest people to pick off.
So that story was actually interesting because she was out late and then she went home, but the door was locked and she didn't want to wake up her parents. And she actually called a friend to say, "Can I stay at your house?" And the friend said no. So as she was going back to her parents' house, that's when Paul Bernardo I guess, convinced her to come close to him, and then I don't know if he pulled a knife or he just like chloroformed her, but he grabbed her just pretty much out of the middle of nowhere.
It wasn't even that she didn't want to wake up her parents. They had written a note and put it on the outside of the door. You missed curfew. You're not allowed in. You can sit on the porch.
Those parents are
and they're never okay. You know, you think you're teaching your kid a lesson, and
right.
That's horrific.
And even from like I think Bernardo's perspective, he was doing something else at the time, like he was prepping for like murdering somebody else, and she walked by and he's like, "Oh, hey, I'm gonna kill you right now."
Look at
that.
Yeah. Sucks.
What a champion.
That was.
Before we get into more, I was gonna say individual serial killers.
Sure.
The last part of my notes was just general characteristics of serial killers, and I wanted to bring them up because some of them are overstated and some of them are misconceptions that I found.
Sure.
This is from, I believe, the FBI and Wikipedia. 2 people I trust more than anyone else.
2 individuals.
2 individual friend of mine. I called up Wiki and I called up FBI. Both really good friends of the podcast. I'm sure they're listening in tonight.
Of course.
Most serial killers, if not all of them, exhibit a lot of these qualities. Psychopathy or mental illness. We kind of went over that, but we keep saying psychopathy because it's so hard to say because you want to say psychopathy when you're looking at it and you're doing a podcast. That's what 8 times so far. I think I've gotten it right every time, except where I did that on purpose. No, on purpose. But can someone fill us in on what psychopathy is? Again, undefeated.
Versus like by sociopath or nope, I'm not going to do it.
It's not
like
psychosis
and psychopaths, right?
Right, and I'm trying to. I don't 100% know the definition. That's why I was throwing it at you guys. Like maybe you guys know, maybe you don't.
So, psychopath is someone who
take a crack at it. Okay.
Yeah, it's essentially they don't have emotions. They're not reacting to the situation.
Well, they can't. Yeah, they don't. What's the word?
It's wired differently in their brain. So like, this is kind of jumping the gun, but like. Sexual satisfaction isn't sexual satisfaction in their brain. It's like a power like grind. Like they need to satisfy something. But this is jumping ahead.
Mm-hmm.
It's like sociopaths. They withdraw from society. They don't know how to fit into society.
Right.
It fits into like the social consciousness. Like if you're a part of society, you accept things for as they are, and you
empathy. I think that was the big one. Empathy is the word I think we're skipping.
Well, I don't think sociopaths have empathy either. I think the difference is psychopaths are calculated and are like, if you look at a psychopath, they look probably well put together. They can hold a job. They can be successful human beings. And sociopaths are impulsive. Sociopaths are the ones that you see in prison.
Okay. Someone with like schizophrenia or something is usually psychopath or sociopath? I got them backwards now.
It would depend. I mean, that's
if they're not held together real well. Like they look like you can see it on them, and people avoid them.
If you see, like, if you are walking around and you see someone like experiencing homelessness and they're talking to themselves and they're, and then they hurt somebody, that's more likely to be a sociopath because they still like lack the empathy, but a psychopath wouldn't. They're just more controlled, I think.
Okay.
So
a psychopath has.
Sociopath.
There's a term I came across called the mask of sanity. I think that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
They can make it look like they're normal, but they're not. They don't actually feel human emotions, as we said. So another one I came across was they're often abused, whether it's physical, emotional, or mental. Amelia touched on something earlier where they're trying to say that usually a trauma to the prefrontal cortex or orbital area of the brain is almost it's present in more than half of them, like 80%. I don't even know what the number was, but it was like a lot. And for that to be an effect, I was like, wow.
Yeah, Richard Ramirez, Ted Bundy, I think there's another one, Gacy. I think all 3 of them had major, like they fell off a swing, had a serious head injury as a child.
Changes them right there.
Yeah.
Next I have paraphilias, which Dan touched on. Paraphilia is like an accordance to, an acquirance to, wanting to have fetishism. Yeah, a little bit. Fetishism, necrophilia, partialism, which is where your sexual satisfaction is tied not to necessarily your sex organs or anything, but a part of someone or
the means to control somebody or exert your power.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
So
The other thing I came across was the McDonald triad. Did you guys hear about this? Okay.
Mm.
So the McDonald triad is one of three things that a lot of these people exhibit, serial killers, usually fire setting, animal abuse, or like opening up, dissecting. And the third one, which I thought was kind of funny, bedwetting.
Yeah.
It's long-term bedwetting, like till you're like 12.
12.
Over
Yeah.
13.
Yeah.
That
Not
was-
like you peed your bed a couple of times until you were
Oh
4.
my God, your 2-year-old is going to be a serial killer.
But I mean, probably.
So there's-
Probably.
There's a weird story with one of them. I forget which one. It might have been Dahmer, where like he would bedwet until 13, and then his mom would come in and like clean his private parts. And like at the age of like 12 and 13, you're aware of your sexuality, so he got this weird
so it's
like
hot.
anger.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, his
Mhm.
weird anger, and then
It was
like
hot.
what is it? Oedipus. He has this like he loves his mom.
Oh, the mother complex,
Yeah.
right?
Like, so he's like attracted and repulsed at the same time. So he can't connect with women at that point, is what I read into it. And it just spins off into awfulness.
Makes sense.
That's,
I was just going to keep going because we're probably going to get real deep into these, but
Mhm.
they're often teased, bullied, or isolated. This sounds pretty common. Pretty makes sense. I mean, they're shut off from society for one reason or the other.
Mhm.
They're
Probably
often
because they're already exhibiting the weird things that we just talked about.
right, and children are the most cruel people of all. Children are all
100%.
serial killers.
Youths are terrifying.
Yes, they are. When I see a gang of like 6-year-olds playing games and laughing and calling each other names, if I'm walking on the same side of the street, I will cross the street to the other side so they don't roast my old person outfit. I'm
See,
terrified.
like 6-year-olds to me is like that. It's just their laughter signifies that some other adult serial killer's there. But like it's 12 and 13-year-olds that like
Oh yeah,
quickly identify what you're like sensitive about.
my weakness. They know your
Yeah.
weakness. They start doing rap battles as you're walking by.
Yeah.
this is the
Mom,
peep show.
spaghetti.
One.
This guy's shirt is the peep show. He's looking out the peephole at them because they keep calling him a pedo,
Yeah.
and he has to keep telling himself, "You're not a pedo. You're not a pedo."
And all the 12 and 13-year-olds are saying, pedo, pedo, pedo. And he's
Pedo.
awkwardly trying to get away from them.
Get away from them. He's looking out the window when they're playing. He's like, "A lot of rotten children. I wish a wreckage would come through, twisted bone and metal." Mark, what are you doing? Oh, nothing. The other thing that's crazy is the last stat I'll give you is that they all tend to have median IQs. It's like 89 was their average score. Most people think serial killers are like super intelligent and swirl wine in a glass. It tends to
Thinking
not
about Hannibal
often
Lecter.
be the fact. Exactly.
So there might
I think
be,
that's swayed. There could be geniuses. I'm talking about the median.
they break it down
Go
in
ahead,
two
Dan.
different groups. So there's the organized group, which is
Uh-oh.
like the more intelligent group who plans and like
Mhm.
they plot and they figure things out so they won't get caught. And then there's the disorganized group, which is more impulsive. So they just kind of
Mhm.
get frustrated with something and then kill somebody out like kind of on a whim. And those people get caught kind of more readily because they're not covering things up, they're not hiding the body. They just kind of like push it to the side and then keep going with their life until they get caught.
I don't disagree.
I mean, I don't know what Bundy's IQ is, but I think his was higher end of average.
Could be.
And I think that's why Bundy was the guy who wanted to do his own self-defense. He escaped.
Oh yeah,
twice.
out the window. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bundy had an IQ of 136.
There we go.
That's pretty good. All right, my
He's
man.
intelligent.
Yeah.
Hey, Ted, if you're listening to the podcast, shout out. How did you do that from beyond the grave? But he did die, right? Like he was
Yeah, he did.
electrocuted. Okay, cool. I think was he the last meal I heard where he didn't eat it?
He didn't eat the
I
meal.
don't know.
Yeah, I think that because he didn't want to eat a last meal, and I believe if you don't ask for a last meal, they give you a standard. It's steak, eggs, hash browns, orange juice, milk, coffee, and grits.
I think that would
Is it-
depend on what state. because
Yes,
for a long-
100%.
He
because for a long
declined the special
time, they
meal.
would. Everyone could say they could get whatever they wanted, and then somebody in Texas ordered a bunch of food and then didn't eat any of it.
That
and
was
Texas was like, "That's it. You just get like one slice of bacon. Goodbye."
Lawrence Russell Brewer was the guy who requested the huge meal and didn't eat it.
Oh, that son of a bitch.
Changed everything for Texas.
He fucked
He
all the
ruined
serial
it for
killers ever.
everyone.
Yeah.
But here's my question. So like he doesn't eat any of it. Like he doesn't want to eat. He's put to death, all that stuff. Like do you think like the guard who has to take it's looking at it and he's like, pretty good. Pretty good steak. I mean, do you throw it in the trash?
I would eat
He didn't touch it.
I would eat it.
I think that's
No,
like
you
serious
wouldn't,
bad
would you?
juju. Yeah, no way.
But he didn't touch it. I mean, I understand. I'm not eating a half-eaten Bundy steak, but like, no, not even one. He didn't ask for it either. I mean, it's just
not
a
even
steak.
about whether or not he touched it or I got like Bundy germs.
That it was for him.
It's just bad luck. That's how you get murdered by a ghost.
Makes sense to me. I
Murdered
don't know.
by starvation. I'm gonna eat that.
Okay. That's it, guys. This is literally all my notes. Oh, 2 more notes. 76% of all killers in the 20th century, serial killers, are from the United States. So shout out, the U.S. reps serial killers mega hard, and it's for one reason only. We pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, folks, and we will serial kill as we see fit.
All day, every day.
Every day. We don't stop, can't stop, won't stop. So But it probably had a lot to do with the Wild West. So maybe it didn't. Well, it said
maybe they just didn't catch their serial killers. Maybe they.
No, I did not mean the Will Smith movie. I know that's where you guys were going. I was literally thinking of because it was like hard to catch crime, like the Bonnie and Clyde type stuff.
Well, yeah, Bonnie and Clyde was definitely, that was the Depression era, and that was interesting because so many people were on their side until they killed like a bunch of cops, and they were like, oh wait, never mind.
Ooh, awkward.
Because Robin Banks was cool, you know, Banks was the devil.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did like the Robin Hood theory where they were going to steal from the rich and give to the poor, and then they didn't give to the poor, and everyone's like, what? Wait.
But they kind of did. They gave
they
a lot
are
to
the
their
poor,
friends
right?
and family.
Yeah. But then they shot a bunch of cops. That's usually a no-go.
Yeah.
Last stat, which hopefully leads us somewhere, guys. 15% of serial killers are women.
15%.
Yeah, that's all I got. In the United States.
You know, what's really unfortunate about that, or I mean, I guess it's not unfortunate, but the thing that bothers me about the 15%.
You wish there was more?
No, I'm actually upset that it's like what they do. Because female serial killers are usually out for power or financial gain.
Mm-hmm.
And so they, like, the act of killing isn't the thrill they get. I mean, there's a couple of, what do they call them?
Sexy ones, right? Sexual.
Angels of Mercy. That some of them really
those
get off
I know you're talking about.
Injecting and bringing them back, injecting and bringing them back. But generally it's like, oh, I need insurance money, or, like, my husband's been beating me, and
that shouldn't be a serial killer if you kill like 3 husbands over the course of like 30 years for like
Black Widow,
$1 million. Yeah, exactly. The Black Widow deal shouldn't be called serial killer. That's like a whole different category, in my opinion. Like that's killing, and it's rude. It's very rude.
So rude.
You should not murder your husband. But
so if you killed 3 of your wives, you would probably not be a serial killer then. You'd be just course of daily life.
It's just regular business. You know what I'm saying? You got to do what you got to do. Make ends meet.
People weren't watching their backs. That's on them.
Over the ornate 3rd story railing that we have that's made of gold onto the marble floor below. Like it's going to happen eventually.
Poetic justice right there.
Yeah.
But I'm also interested in the ladies who are interested in other killers.
Oh boy.
Ooh.
Buckle up, folks. I have a feeling we got a long list of craziness coming in here.
So this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. People get fixated on a serial killer, and regardless of how bad or evil or amoral that person is, they still want to sleep with them. It's like
not even regardless. I'd say almost because of.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's definitely because of.
You talked about like serial killers. Was it paraphilia?
Yeah.
These it's not just women, because it's men too, like this hybristophilia, which is the idea that you're interested or romantically interested in somebody who's committed some sort of horrific crime.
Good pronunciation, by the way. Is that how all these men get letters in prison?
Yeah.
It happens all the time. Like Charles Manson has like all these like love letters coming to him. I'm like, who's writing someone in prison?
The Manson girls too.
Oh, were they?
Yeah, they were getting letters. And like Carla Homolka, which we talked about for just a second, she ended up marrying her former attorney's brother. So she's free, has a family with this man who knew all of her crimes, seen everything laid out. She confessed to it. And he's like, yeah, but she hot though.
She hot though.
What was that called again?
Crime's kind of hot. Yeah, say that again. I was gonna say it, but I was like, I'm gonna butcher
The
it.
hybristophilia.
Hybristophilia.
Hybristophilia. Hell yeah.
Hybristophilia.
Keyword high. No keyword brist. No keyword philia.
It's also called the Bonnie and Clyde syndrome.
I did come across that then. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So like, it's a little bit like celebrity, right? Yo, they're so famous. Yeah, they chop people up. They're so famous.
The Menendez brothers are both got married in prison. And
Really?
yeah, they killed their parents and just straight up said all the beats. I think one of them married a model.
What?
Oh man.
So that's the key.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
You need a
your
thing.
parents and you'll get a hot woman.
In prison. I mean, let's cursor, disclaimer. We're not saying you'll be free and everything will be great. Everything will be pretty free. All your meals will be free and everything else will be pretty great. But yeah. Otherwise, don't do it.
Do you think anybody messes with them in prison? If they know they've killed like 50 people? Like they're
after 10 years?
Isolation,
dude,
right?
You can't ride one crime for 10 years. You imagine, yo, Menendez told me to scram again. It's like, oh, essay. He said what? And it's like, he said, get the hell out, man. And I was like, did you step to him this time? He's like, nah, it's been 8 years. I'm not going to start now. Someone's going to start with these guys. You can't ride one crime forever.
I think it depends on the crime. I mean, what was it? Dahmer was only in prison for 2 years before someone murdered him.
Yeah, with a steel pole. I came across that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It really depends on what you've done, like how crazy someone thinks you are.
But that one had more to do with disgust and hate. Did you also hear what Dahmer did with a lot of his food, his prison food?
No.
So, he was famous for his crimes. Like, I think he rode that was a little bit of a power trip for him. He would shape the prison food to look like genitals. And then sometimes he would make them look like people. And he would cover them in ketchup to make it look like he killed like blood. And they said that a lot of the inmates thought that was in poor taste, whether they really meant that or not. But the one guy killed them. So, I mean, they had to be pretty legit. Like, can you imagine if he just pointed at you across the way and he made like a wiener out of mashed potatoes and then he started squirting some ketchup on it, looking at you like and he has a reputation. It's not like he's doing it randomly. You know, this guy really might rip off a wiener and eat it. You know what I mean? So
I think that, I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I wasn't like bros with him or anything, but
I wasn't bros with him.
But it sounds like he might have been playing that up because I think Dahmer, in every other instance that you see him, he's just this guy he's like, thank God you finally caught me.
Can we get into his story? The reason being is, so before this episode, I watch Criminal Minds. I love serial killer stories, like it all whatever. But I never sat down and researched each one to know who was famous for which crimes. Because in my head, one serial killer did all of these things. Which is very untrue.
It all kind of mixes together.
Yes, it did. And it's wild. So as I'm researching tonight, I was like, Dahmer did all this one. Leatherface did all this one. I forgot his real name. But let's focus on Dahmer for a second because he's a good guy, stand-up guy. The Dahmer was the one who was charismatic and found out he was gay at like 14 or no?
Well, I mean,
uncharismatic. He's not.
Yeah, no, Dahmer was not charismatic. In fact, like when he was in high school, he had some friends. He wasn't like a super loser. He did this thing. I don't know if you found it when you were looking it up. That was called like pulling a Dahmer.
I did. Yeah. Rude act like he was having a seizure or having cerebral palsy. That's rude.
I'm pretty sure Nick has done that.
No, I've never. For the record, I don't think I've ever done that, but. Pulling a Dahmer.
But there were people who thought he was like a comedic genius. They were like, this guy's hilarious. And so, he got made fun of, but not any more than anybody else did in high school.
And didn't he show up to school drunk a lot?
Yes, he had a severe alcohol problem.
He said it was his medicine.
I think what's most interesting about Dahmer is like, so he had friends who drank with him, not as much, to the same extent. Mm-hmm. He did his pulling a Dahmer, bros, and then he also would dissect, and like he wasn't like an animal torturer. He was more into like once they were
dead animals
doing things to them. But he'd bring friends out there with him, and they would do it with him too sometimes.
You got to be social, right? I wonder.
I just mean like how many other people fit the same. Like we're talking about the McDonald triad. How many other people in his friend group met the same? Like if you looked at their childhoods.
Right, like
the exact same
psychopathy, some weird fetishes going on. Yeah. They're helping them dissect. Like there's also things, red flags. You're saying they have a whole bunch, right?
Yeah. And so like I mean, you just think about all these people who have the same exact habits, but they don't have the psychopathy gene, or they didn't have the same childhood. Doesn't mean that they can't like have a, I would say, unnatural curiosity with dead
Right.
animals. But
Was
like
he
that
the
in
one-
itself isn't a red flag.
Was he the one whose dad was a chemist?
Yes.
So that was cool too, because he said, yeah, of course my son's interested in dead things and dissecting. Like that's how a scientist's brain works. And it kind of is, right?
So
to
this-
a degree.
Yeah.
And he actually encouraged it, because up until
Yeah.
his son was like 10 or 11, he was really aloof. And then when he expressed interest in like seeing
was
what
like, yeah,
happens
come
when
on,
you dissolve
kid.
bones, he was like, my son cares about things. Cool. Let me foster this.
let's get a giant steel barrel and some caustic soda. My son will love this.
It'll be great.
What's the worst that can happen? Now, we're going to get into, like, I don't know how detailed we got to get into their crimes versus their pathology versus what they actually physically did.
We've already
More
gotten
into
into
the psychology behind it.
Okay.
Just personally.
Mhm.
Like it was interesting to me, like how, like, because afterwards they always get diagnosed. I mean, some of them beforehand have been in and out of prison and had mental health services, but some of them, up until they get caught for their murders, haven't.
No one knew. Right.
So it's interesting to me that Dahmer and Aileen Wuornos were both diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And on itself, like, tons and tons of people have BPD, and they're not murderers.
Serial killers, yeah, as we would say.
It's just interesting if I've ever investigated that particular mental illness. Like the traits are like inability to be alone, fear of abandonment, unstable emotions. Like these are like you would like write down as serial killer traits 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, it's like a red flag. Hey.
Yeah. And so it's just, and then if you look at their childhoods, like we were talking about head injuries and otherwise, you can just draw parallels. It's just like, well, duh.
In retrospect, it's a lot of duh, I guess. But what's crazy about his, and you just mentioned it, his fear of abandonment was 100% the whole thing. He would always, he also, again, I'm not trying to get too graphic, but it is
like a
important
buddy
to
move. He would be like, hey, come with me.
Yeah.
I want to drink with you and have a casual like night. And then he would,
I want to do photos. You look like a great guy. You're a model. Like I said, it was like a repressed gay thing. Like he didn't think he was. So he would get these guys back. And a lot of times drugging became a thing. And I was like, wow, these guys are drugging everybody. It's like drugging this guy. I'm drugging this guy. You're drugging this guy. And he would drug these people. And I don't think his intention was necessarily to kill. It was to incapacitate these people so that they couldn't leave him.
kind of like disarming them.
Right. But he didn't want them to leave him. Like that was his whole thing. He didn't want to be abandoned, and his desires were crazy and a little sick.
More than a little.
He would drill a hole in someone's head, pour water, and they were okay, and he had to kill them. So the next time he drilled a hole in someone's head, he poured hydrochloric acid in there, and they were messed up real bad. It was a young kid, a 14-year-old, right? Is this the story?
Fucked.
Hold on. So the 14-year-old left the room because Dahmer was just leaving him. He was having his way with him, doing his thing, having a party. He went out to get more beers, I believe was the story. And as he was coming back to his own apartment, he saw the 14-year-old talking to some ladies, and the ladies were trying to flag over a cop because he was like acting funny. He looked like he was drugged. He was covered in a little bit of blood. And the cop came over, and Dahmer was like, oh shit, I gotta act cool. And he's like, that's my boyfriend. And the cop was like, whoa, okay, that's your boyfriend. That's normal. And then the ladies were like, you're not going to take him? You're not going to do anything? And he's like, oh, we just let, at the time, I guess, because like the whole gay stigma, he was just like, oh, I'm not going to mess with this. Let's let it go. Everything's fine. Anyway, he took that 14-year-old back and murdered him. But
wasn't he the one that chopped up their bodies and then put them in the bathtub and then would like dissolve their flesh?
Yeah, he was getting rid of a lot of flesh.
Yeah, but he kept a lot of stuff too. He was a trophy guy.
He kept heads, right? He would talk to the heads.
Yeah. He'd do a lot with the heads, from what I heard. Again, we don't want to get too graphic on the thing, but he was a trophy guy.
Yep. not a trophy guy and not a guy either. But Aileen Wuornos is particularly interesting to me as a serial killer because I don't know if you guys did any research on her childhood, but it's just like straight horrific. You know, like her dad was in prison and killed himself after, you know, he had hurt people, and then she's raped and pregnant by 14, and she's like 20 years old and marries a 70-year-old, and she's got alcohol problems of her own. And basically, like, her whole life is just a shit show. It's horrific. And the first guy that she kills, like, and it's her excuse for every person she kills, is that they were trying to rape her, and then she had to kill them. And I don't know. Huh?
I like that she tried to use that excuse on people who were like, they were like ex-police officers and lieutenants or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, this guy is so unlikely to do that, and she still shot them like 6 or 7 times.
Yeah.
It's absurd.
Damn.
I wonder if, because that first guy she actually did kill was a convicted rapist.
It's easy to sell that story, and she probably got away on it.
And I wonder if the first time it happened, it was real.
Right,
Like,
and then
didn't need to kill him, but like I said, the guy was a convicted rapist. Like, I don't know for sure. I do believe that this woman suffered from PTSD. So yes, she was killing to rob them so that she could support her and her girlfriend and their drug and alcohol problems and, you know, all of that stuff. I'm not saying that any of it's okay, but I wonder if the first one might have been actually an attempted rape.
So let's talk about the victimization part of it. It's like,
that's weird, yeah.
The first time around, maybe she was defending herself, and then there's a mental stigma that sticks after that. Maybe that happens once and you just can't deal with it, and your reaction is to fight back and kill. But I could see that happening for like the first time and then persisting until you resolve that issue. But for like Aileen Wuornos, she never got out of that state. She just kept killing anybody who came near her, it seemed. And
she kept looking for it. Like they say that the reason why her defense doesn't work is she had like essentially a kill bag. You know, like if she was just hitchhiking or looking to do sex work, why did you have a gun and like Windex and all of the stuff in your bag? Oh, okay. It's because you were looking to kill somebody.
Gotta be prepared.
Right.
Yeah.
You never know.
She was a Girl Scout.
Or you gotta be prepared. Gotcha. What's funny is
her story is really interesting even afterwards, because when she goes into prison, some like woman who's only like 15 years older than her adopts her and like basically sells her story while like her trial's happening. So there's like a made for TV movie that's happening while the trial's happening. They're making all this money off of her. It's just really terrible with this idea, because this woman, Aileen Wuornos, also has borderline personality disorder. So she's looking for someone to stay with her, to take care of her. And so they use that. And some say that maybe she didn't have a fair trial because all this
the whole thing going on. Right.
Yeah. And then they abandoned her when she stopped doing interviews because she didn't want them making money off of her. And I don't know if you guys heard any of the like court proceedings with her in it, where she's like telling everybody she hopes they get raped, and she's like actually insane. And that's one of the things that really gets to me when you hear about some serial killers being prosecuted and we have to decide whether or not they're sane.
Right.
Yeah, or fit to stand trial. And I don't think that she was. And the idea that you could say that she was means like maybe you have a loose grip on what mental health is.
So the only definition I've read about it was that if you're unable to actually like converse with your counsel, then you're insane. Like if you can't help your counsel help you, then there's nothing you can do. You can't stand trial.
Yeah, well, that's, I think, fit to stand trial. But the mental health one is you have to be able to, like, whether or not you're sane is whether or not you can see that the crimes you did were illegal or heinous in some way. So, like, there's a guy, I think they called him, like, the vampire killer, he thought that in order to survive, he needed to drink the blood of victims. So he just, like, walked around a neighborhood and opened any door that was open and went in and killed them and, like, disemboweled them and did all these terrible things. Like, that guy was actually insane. Because he was just like out of his gourd and could not tell you that this was a bad choice. Where like Aileen Wuornos would hide a body, steal a car, do her best to cover her tracks, and that's how they decide whether or not it's sane. But I think it's more. I think honestly, I think it needs to be better defined.
Like it definitely does. mental health.
Understanding that something's wrong doesn't mean that you were in control of your actions at the time.
No, the mental health system is terrible, especially legally speaking. Did you have something in your notes about declaring insanity versus not declaring insanity? Or maybe that was your notes. I apologize. I thought one of you had it in your notes.
I don't know that it's actually definable. I know that it's been increasing slightly over the years, but I don't know if that there's a clear definition of whether you're insane or not. It takes some...
Like you can't say borderline personality disorder made me do this, right? But you have to take that into consideration, correct?
But not when you're talking about whether or not you're insane. I think I might be a little off kilter here, but I do think it is whether or not you can see your crime.
Okay.
Like, can you understand the good versus bad? And if you can say, okay, yeah, I killed somebody and I shouldn't have, then they're able to say, oh, then you're sane.
Yeah, there's like a methodicalness there with like serial killers. If they could figure out how to execute the crimes that they did, then there's almost no way that they were insane, because they were logically processing the event and figuring out how to avoid being detected.
And I think my argument with that is if you're able to like plan strategically and like plan to murder and then like put bodies in the
disembowel,
dissolve them, then like maybe you're a little crazy.
This is what I'm going to say to you guys, which is exactly kind of the crux of the whole serial killer thing. I've loved hearing about serial killers. I love reading their stories. Like it's fascinating to me because there's something missing in their logic. Like there seems to be a step that I can't even fathom. Like I think like they do. I perceive the world like they do. As far as physically, I understand warmth. I understand another person's talking to me. I understand it's raining today. But there's something so bizarrely different about someone who can justify killing more than one people and dissolving the body and like doing things with bones and stuff. It's like crazy to me. So that any serial killer is insane to me.
There's like almost. I'm going to highlight a portion of that because like the way I see a serial killer is like he goes out on a date and then he gets romantic and it starts to get physical, and like as a normal guy you just kind of like become romantic and passionate, but a serial killer just spins that completely and doesn't have any of that romance, no passion whatsoever, and he just starts to kill. So it's like a violence that happens at the point where you're supposed to be connected with somebody, except they disconnect. They decide not to be in that situation with that person, and then they thrive on that, like the power, the sense of destroying somebody else.
I think I also like to think of serial killers as addicts. In the like, if you are suffering from an addiction, you're going to do crazy things, and then I also use crazy, and I know it's pejorative, so know that I'm just like being flippant. But you do like things that you could never imagine. Like you hear like drug addicts do like nutso things, and they have reasons for them, and they change their whole life in order to continue to feed their addiction. That's sane. I say sane because I think drug addiction is also a mental illness that sane people wouldn't do.
Like eating a person's face in Florida. Like eating that guy's face. There's that guy who ate that guy's face.
Yeah, he's on Crocodile. If you're on Crocodile, you guys understand. It's just a thing that happens. Move on.
If you're in Florida.
What you're touching on though is also important because it emphasizes escalation. These serial killers often escalate. Almost every story starts with, I did something by accident to a friend, or I did something to a woman on a crazy whim, and it gets more violent, more calculated,
you need
more escalated. Yeah. Which is very much like the drug addiction thing.
Yeah, the story there is that like they will focus on someone who's like younger and then move to someone who's older. They'll go after women, and then I forget who it was, but they started going after couples and then forcing couples to do acts. It might have been the Golden State Killer,
Golden State,
the Golden State Killer. He started off as a burglar and a rapist, and then he was focusing on couples, and then started murdering. Yeah,
escalation.
He would stack plates on their backs, on the man's back, and said, "If you move, I'm going to hear the plates move, and then bad things are going to happen." And then he would do whatever he wanted to, and he'd like go quiet for a while to see if they would like start reacting, and then he'd like show up again 30 minutes later, and they'd be like. They wouldn't know what that was going on.
30 minutes is a long goddamn time. That's wild.
Yeah.
And he'd call. I think there was a call that he made like 20 years after he had raped a woman, and he said, "Hey, remember when we played?"
Oh my God.
I can't
Really?
even imagine. But,
So
That's crazy.
I'm gonna hark on this one because this is a somewhat awkward question, but like in your life, are there moments when you feel vulnerable?
I plead the fifth.
As a man, there's only a couple times in my life where I felt like I was vulnerable, and here's one example. So I dropped somebody off at a bus station. I pulled in. I made sure that they were okay. When I was waiting there were two guys who were obviously druggies, came up behind my car at the same time. One guy knocked on my window, another guy was looking from my right side, and one guy asked for money, and I couldn't tell what the other guy was doing because I couldn't look both ways. I ended up giving like the one guy $1, and he went away and left me alone. That was when I felt the most vulnerable, because that other guy could have done anything to smash in my car and jump me. As a man, you're not really that vulnerable in general because you're strong enough to maybe put up a fight. I think that's changing a little bit with more technology and guns and all sorts of stuff. But as a woman, there's probably more moments where you feel like this could probably end badly.
yeah, I mean, not even that dramatic. I think what happens is like our parents and media and everybody trains you that honestly, if someone gives me a compliment, like even just like a basic compliment, I know I'm like a little sensitive, but if you look a little bedraggled and you're making intense eye contact and you say, "You're a pretty girl," I'm freaked out. Like
Do you do the keys in your fist thing?
Yeah, 100%.
That's so funny. Most guys don't even know about this. Women like are just trained. And this is another one. Do you check your car when you get in?
Yeah, there's got to be.
This is so crazy. So guys take this for granted. You get into your car late at night if it's in a parking lot or something to make sure you're not followed. You have to look in your car.
I don't park in parking garages if I don't have to.
Do you? Yeah. That's another thing. Like guys don't even think of this. It's
I don't.
It's a common thing. Yeah, exactly. I usually don't until I've heard a lot of these stories. Now I'm like, that's crazy. The other day I got in my Jeep. I was like, is anyone in here? No one was in there, and no one thinks I'm that attractive. Like I think they think I'm sort of that attractive, but not that attractive.
Not worth it.
The other thing is like women are told like put your keys between each like fist so that like if someone comes at you, you can at least hit them.
I used to have
Did you ever think of that, Dan?
Oh, sorry.
No, I was asking Dan if you ever thought of it because clearly
I've never thought about it.
Yeah,
I've never had to do that.
Well, the point isn't that you have to do it. It's a little bit like African Americans get pulled over by a cop. Like they're told by their parents at an early age. There's like a talk that they give. It's like just literally, son, don't mess with this. I usually talk with guys, so you keep your hands here because you make a sudden movement. Hey, I'm gonna get my stuff over here. You can literally get shot.
Yeah. And you have to respond to their bias by being overly courteous.
Right, which is a little messed. It's not a little messed up. It's messed up. But regardless, it's something that you take for granted. It's something you don't really think of.
And it's super casual things. And I think one of my most recent experiences, and this is just something on the internet, which isn't even like a personal thing, like a physical person thing. Someone messaged me, got a message request, and I accepted it, and they just said hi, and then I said hi back, and then I got a dick pic. And
wow,
that's another thing.
And that was one way to do that. But then the next time someone randomly messaged me, I like tried to like figure out like, oh hi, how do I know you? And they were like, oh, I don't. You're just a person, and blah blah blah. And so they gave me a compliment, and I made sure to say thank you because I didn't want a dick pic. I didn't want them to be mean to me, and so I said thank you. And then they followed it up with, so do you live alone? And I'm like,
what the hell?
That's acceptable to ask.
Yeah, that's not.
You know, and so this is just like internet safety, but that's pretty much every interaction you have with a person. I think women are just on guard with, like, okay, they're being nice to me. Okay, I'll be nice back to them. But
can you give us an honest opinion? How many dick pics have you gotten? Obviously unsolicited. Obviously
in my life.
Too many? Dozens?
Too many. I'd say
hundreds.
Dozens.
Okay.
Not hundreds.
Okay.
I'm
I didn't know. I don't know.
Not that much social media.
As a guy, it's completely like it's a foreign concept to think that happens all the time because guys probably are wishing for like a vagina pic, but that's not a thing. It doesn't even exist.
Can you imagine crossing your fingers and being like,
come on.
hi. And you see the 3 dots. It's like they're typing. Come on, do it. But no, I actually don't know that I'd ever root for a vagina pic either.
Yeah.
But anyway. Do it. She's gonna shoot a clam over here. Come on. We got sidetracked a little bit.
Yeah.
But it shows the vulnerability. It's like as a man,
You're right.
you have physical strength, and women don't have that. And comparing a man to a woman's strength is completely different. Like there's no situation where you're actually understanding the difference between a man's strength and a woman's strength. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and you're talking about physical strength, but then there's also the political and like societal norms that go with it. And so even if like you hear plenty of instances where someone doesn't report crime because they're afraid of not like something terrible happened to them, but reporting it, well, they're not going to be believed. The things that go into it, like we have all these rape kits that I think honestly, even rape kits in themselves are really intrusive. Like after someone's assaulted you, you're supposed to go to the hospital and be like, they swab everything. And so the idea that you would even do that, and then you have kits that are sitting for years in some sort of backlog. We've got hundreds and thousands of untested rape kits. And it's just like after being violated, you get violated again.
Right.
And so you get why people wouldn't want to report it.
And ask violated questions and then ask, I think there's a certain way they ask the question to make sure you're not to blame.
Yep.
Like, are you sure you didn't say yes 4 times?
What were you wearing when this happened? That kind of, basic stuff that they already feel like, and women do it to themselves before they even get the questions asked,
It's a no-go. But this brings us back to serial killers, guys.
Yes, it does.
Do you want to talk about the Golden State Killer, how he was eventually caught? Because this kind of feeds into that.
That is interesting.
It's crazy interesting. I was reading this book called I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara that was published. She died before it got published, so they kind of had to piece it together.
Big fan of the podcast she was before she passed.
Nope.
Sorry.
Give me a second.
You threw her off.
I ruined it. I
apologize.
You have to be on your toes with me. I apologize.
But so yeah, she died, and her husband, who's Patton Oswalt, had it finished up for
Nobody
her.
knows Patton Oswalt. That's so cool. I know. Yeah.
And then it was released, and then several months later they caught him in exactly the way that she said that they would, which was through familial DNA, which it wasn't 23andMe. It was some other website that has less secure data collection, I guess.
So also for the record, because I originally, when I heard this story, I thought that he filled out a 23andMe or a subsidiary, and then they just were like, hey, idiot, we got you. We got your DNA. You just matched it up. So that wasn't the story. I just found out today. So bring it down.
California, right? And then California in the 2004-ish range, they started, they voted for Prop 69, which is for any felon, I believe, they were collecting DNA for. So anybody who committed a crime, they had this giant database. And then also there's something called the CODIS, which is like a national database of DNA for criminals.
Oh.
It's awesome.
Yeah. I don't know how. I guess he committed a crime prior, maybe? I didn't read into this part, though.
Oh, I thought it was something else. Did you read familial?
Yeah, but how did they... I guess they knew... They had his DNA from what? From all the rapes he committed?
No, I think all his relatives.
It was. I think that...
It was his relatives that gave him away.
There was still a great deal of detective work that they had to do. So yes, they got it through one of his relatives, but then they had, let's say, 100 people that they thought this could be. And then they compared the DNA to who this was. So they had this DNA, they said, this is a match. Okay, so this is a third cousin match to the Golden State Killer. And then they had to say, okay, now let's look at all of these other possible people that are connected to this guy. Well, this guy wasn't even in the area at this time. This guy's too young. This guy's too old. And then they were like, oh, it's him. But they had to do detective work after they got that DNA evidence.
Yeah. Did you catch that?
30 years later.
Literally, his relatives were taking these tests and sending in their DNA or being convicted of other crimes. I guess I didn't consider that. But they were getting DNA from all these people who had his DNA, familial. It was very similar to his. Like they could tell whether it was oh, this is an almost perfect match. This is like an uncle or a great relative of his. Oh, this has to be one family tree removed from the guy who did all these crimes. And they started piecing together all these pieces around him using that DNA. And finally, they were like, well, this guy fits the bill pretty good. And I think at that point, they had to find other stuff on him and physical evidence, but it really pointed them right to him.
I can't remember, so this might be incorrect, but I feel like they actually got a piece of his DNA.
Oh, did they?
From after they had narrowed it down to him, they're like, oh, don't mind if I do rummage through your garbage and take out some. Yeah. But I don't quote me.
I quoted you.
Was he a
Amelia?
He didn't. I don't know if this guy was a necrophiliac or not. I don't think he was.
I didn't catch that.
No.
Which, oddly enough, there's a stat in one of the, what was it, Rutgers? Is that if you're more intelligent,
Rutgers study,
you're more likely to commit necrophilia. I just wanted to add that little fact.
Wait, intelligence is more likely to?
Yeah, if you're more intelligent, then you linger on the fact that you killed somebody. Therefore, you're willing to go back because you are not, you're not trying to avoid the scene. You're thinking about it. So, the more intelligent people will go back, and then
that's Bundy.
I guess. Yeah, and they what was the first? Oh crap! What was his name? I lost him. He's gone.
Dahmer.
Anyway,
Green River Killer.
Oh, the Green River guy. Yeah. Real quick on that same Rutgers study, they figured out in the United States, at least, how serial killers kill their victims. Number one, folks, gun.
Oh, gun.
43%, correct? Number two, anyone want to take a guess? What is it?
I'd say it's like bludgeoning.
Ooh,
knife.
Poison?
No.
Oh, strangulation.
Strangulation, the old 21.7%. Behind that, we got 14.8% stabbed. You see this? I could serial kill with this. I'm not gonna, folks. A little word for the wise. 14%. Next up, bludgeon. You were right. 9%. Whack. You ever see a serial killer kill someone with a hammer? Check the internet. What's 7.2%? Last one I'm going to go into because a lot of the rest are like 1%ers.
Oh, poison.
Ding, 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 ding.
Nice. Actually, LaCroix is rat poison, so that's interesting.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Two birds, one stone. Can you be a serial killer if the third person you kill is yourself? Probably not. I doubt it. No cooling off period there. That's the problem.
So are we psychopathic? We all took a test, right? I think it was the hair psychopathic.
Yeah, I didn't get 100, so it's no big deal.
Yeah, it's over 30 psychopathic tests.
It's out of 30?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It was only like 5% of people are actually psychopathic, and I scored pretty low, which is I thought strange because I'm very non-empathic. So I scored lower than Nick actually. I scored 11.
Son of a bitch. I scored 12, folks. I took the test. I got a 12.
I got a 10.
Oh,
wow. That makes
interesting.
Actually makes sense when you think about it. Doesn't everything make sense in retrospect? You know what I mean? I literally just done dissecting the dog that passed a couple months ago. It's a joke. Not really. So wait, did you guys have friends who took the test?
Yes.
And?
I gave it to all of my friends.
Oh my God.
Some of them were pretty close. Like the guys I'm on the show.
I got a 29 and a half.
Yeah. The guys I did the show with got like an 8 or a 9. But my boyfriend got a 26. And I'm thinking 26. Yeah.
You might want to talk to him.
Yeah. I'm worried. He also had a head injury, so I'm just concerned.
Oh no, it's all
2
adding
and 2
up.
and 2 and 2.
Yeah.
That's for the record.
Write it down.
Yep. Head injury.
Now, in that
boyfriend,
same Rutgers
DNA.
Rutgers study, can you collect any? Most serial killers, what do they kill for? They this is the Rutgers study. Number one, what do you think it is, guys?
Control.
31.8%. They actually group this with something else, which is a more general term. Enjoyment.
Oh,
You got it though.
as entertainment.
Entertainment. Yeah.
Something to do on a Friday night.
Do you know what number 2 was? Which I was a little surprised. A little Black Widow action here.
Okay.
30.1% kill for financial gain. Is that even considered serial killing at that point?
That's like
what if you're killing CEOs or like the CEO's son or like like whatever, like to get ahead in your job? Is that
not just one? No. I mean, it's still considered for gain, but one.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Serial killer.
Belganessa killed her.
Killed every dude she ever went with.
Yeah.
Good point.
She had like overlapping life insurance policies on her husband, and she's like, "Oh, jackpot!" Once every 20 years, and they slaughter him. Let's get that cash.
That's a cooling off period, folks.
Yeah.
Anger made up the third one. Multiple. Wow, more than one. Gang activity made up 6.3%. This was a hotly debated event with the FBI because they claim that if you're killing people for a gang membership, it's not considered serial killing. Some people said it was, some said it wasn't. It really depends. You're trying to get notoriety and move ahead in the ranks. It would be like, are mafia killers considered serial killers if they kill like 9 people? I don't think so either. I don't include either of them. I agree.
Huh.
I'm a true crime junkie, and I don't care about the mafia, and I don't care about gang violence.
True crime.
I agree.
I feel like that's like care about it. These are epidemics.
These are epidemics of large, terrible proportion, but also we don't care about it right this second.
Whatever.
So what about like accomplices, like the Paul Bernardo and Homolka? I can't say that.
Homolka. Yeah.
Homolka. That was close enough. So she was kind of convinced by Paul to do all these awful things, even to her own sister. So a lot of the deaths involved in, or murders, I'll say, involved in like the both of them killing were like chloroform related. Like they didn't know how to control how to knock somebody out, so they killed them. But in the end, they put the blame mostly on Bernardo, and the woman was only convicted of like very few years because they didn't blame the woman in it.
Good number.
Well, I think she only got charged with the manslaughter of her sister, and it was manslaughter because they said it was accidental.
Man's laughter, as we say here.
Meaning that they only meant to rape her. Her death was accidental. And the tapes that they had recording what would have Carla's participation were withheld by Paul's attorney and then destroyed.
Ooh, coincidence?
Yeah. Well, they were destroyed around 2001 because the judge thought that they'd get leaked to the internet, like they were afraid the basement tapes would. So around the same time, they were just like purging all of these video records.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Is that a common practice today?
I don't think so today. Like destroying evidence is crazy.
Right. We're like the Patriots in Super Bowl 41 or whatever.
But
feel better.
Yeah. It's because the Eagles won. Yep.
No, they lost.
They lost.
I'm talking about the one we lost.
Oh.
Yeah. Spygate. They had the tapes destroyed. I still don't know why he did that. Like, he could have just said, no one needs to see it. No big deal. It's over. But instead, he had the tapes destroyed. The commissioner of the NFL. How weird is that, right? Huh. We're going to get into that. Spygate is real. Anyway, the problem's been justified this past year. There's a rematch, and we all know how that ended.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Carla Homolka. I was like, what?
There was a rematch. Carla's back in it. Her sister was re-going. She survived.
But just something I think that you guys might find interesting about Carla Homolka. After she was released, because she only spent 12 years in jail again, so she was released probably in her early 40s, I think.
She struck a plea bargain against the other guy. Yeah.
But do you guys know about Luca Magnotta?
No.
So he's Canadian, and he killed somebody on like the internet live.
What?
And yeah, he was doing like more and more, like back when like the internet was kind of new and you had like those gore websites everywhere, like rotten.com and all that kind of stuff. Well, he was trying to make himself famous. He'd applied to all these reality TV shows and all this stuff.
Didn't work.
He's known for he killed a man and then raped his corpse. Live streamed it.
Wow.
But he said that he was like dating Carla Homolka, and she was like, boy, you crazy. No, I'm not. But it's just interesting that he was trying to tie himself to her before he had committed this crime. And it's just a weird, like, double connection to serial killers.
Like giving props to somebody else for some awful deed. So real quick, there's so the sentencing of like men and women, like overall, there's a very gender bias against men for any like similar crimes. They give women 20% reduced sentences compared to men. So
not 20% more salary, correct?
Correct. Reduced sentencing. So men are obviously more violent. They're more prevalent, more sexually disturbed. But if you're having the same crime committed, why do you think that women are being given reduced sentences? And even like serial killers who get out, like why would you ever let a serial killer like into public again? Like it's not like they're weaker. They might be older, physically weaker, but they're still capable.
A lot of these numbers I was going to say I saw were like way lower than I thought they should be for every serial killer. He got 38 years. I was like, he boiled like 9 people.
Yeah.
Let's give this guy 120,
Let's just
please.
end him right now.
I don't care what kind of plea deal. Right.
Well, in that instance, he only got tried for 2 of them, so it's 2 years, 38 years for 2 convicted. But as far as the women getting a lesser sentence, that's a thing that I think that
women are
goes
dangerous.
Back a long time.
They are very scary.
But you guys know anything about Ruth Bader Ginsburg? She's my queen.
I've heard of her. Yeah, I know who she is. She listens to the podcast. Personal friend of the podcast.
RBG. Got it.
She
RBG.
got the Supreme Court to listen to her a million years ago because I can't remember what state it was, but basically the drinking limit for females was different than males because they assumed that women were more responsible. So they were like, okay, women can buy alcohol at 18, but men can't buy it till they're 21. So that just meant that women were buying alcohol for men, and that was a thing. Right. And what she said was, this is inherently an injustice because you're saying, and the way to fight that was to say, because she was for women's equality, saying that this was unfair to men. And it's time and again we see women are supposed to be the more docile or sensitive, the less capable, the less violent sex. And it's just not true. I mean, I guess statistically, yes, but I mean, not to the point where you could not serve a life sentence for murdering somebody. But it's across the board, not just with murder, but with anything. We just assume women aren't as capable. We underestimate them in every way, even when it comes to committing crime.
I do. Underestimate them in crime.
Yeah.
Yep. I can't wait till one steals my car and wraps it around a pole, and I go, "Damn, I was wrong. I was way wrong."
That was hot. I can't believe she just wrecked that thing. Yeah. I wish I could see it again.
You never know.
And as far as rehabilitation goes, I mean, the idea is like that's how we set our prison system up. Like that's not like if we say you did this crime, you get 40 years. Like that's just, we assume that sending somebody away to prison is supposed to rehabilitate them. And so
that's like a whole episode as far as, right? You know what I mean? Like we can get into how rehabilitation isn't really rehabilitation. The crime rate isn't really the crime rate. The justice system is not rigged. Well, it is rigged, but there's other things to talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. Here's a question for you guys. It's more personal, more weird, more kind of how I wanted to go towards the end. So they did all these studies on the physical signs and the mental brain scans that show psychopathy, family history, all these signs that might say, hey, this person's liable to be a serial killer. Let's say they go even further by 2025, right? They actually know by looking at a brain scan if you're a serial killer or not. What should they do to someone who hasn't committed any crimes, but is verifiably has all the signs, had a head injury at a certain age, and he's your cousin?
Isn't this a movie with Tom Cruise?
It is Minority Report. You're a little bit right. Like, yeah, like where do we stand on that?
So I think that some people have this psychopathy, and it
first person to mess it up. I love it.
So it helps them. Like if you're a doctor and you're not emotionally connected to your patient, that's a good thing because then you can focus on
surgeries.
Yeah, you can focus on the mechanical portions of providing healthcare to somebody. You're not emotionally connected to whether they survive or not.
Yeah,
So-
you don't care about them. You think they're a piece of meat and you're cutting them. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Which is
Someone with high psychopathy would say that.
yeah. But it helps. I mean, it helps in certain situations. It just doesn't help if
Could
that
help.
person
How about
decides
it
to
could
cut other
help?
people
Can we
up.
say it could help? We're not going to say it helps. It could help.
Can't wait till
And
you're
lots of people are
performing
able to
surgery.
right?
Yeah, there's lots of heartfelt surgeons who love their patients doing a very damn fine job.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Shedding a tear when they're.
What would you do if you found out you had high risk?
Move to the country. Live a very
Start
private
killing
life.
people?
Yeah. Bury them very deep.
I mean, I think that's exactly it. I mean, that's why we were talking about James Fallon. Like, he lived his whole life just feeling these feelings, and then when he found out, he was just like, oh. But it doesn't mean that he felt any desire to hurt anybody. He still learned what was right and what's wrong. Somehow that was still relayed to him, and he got it. Whether or not he was like, this is right, this is wrong, but doing the wrong thing feels good, and doing the good thing feels nothing, you know? Like, he luckily grew up in a life that reinforced positive behavior.
So, Amelia, you're saying all the research done, everything done, we'll never actually be able to tell who is going to be a serial killer, correct?
I don't think so.
So then
100%.
why bother?
Why bother doing the research?
Yeah.
For the same reason that we want to know anybody, like friends. Why do you make human connection? I mean, once you find out, I think it's after the fact. I mean, can we get somebody through counseling? Like, the idea is we don't like to diagnose children as psychopaths. They have a specific name for it. But there's a way to help them grow and to not be, terrible people when they grow up. And if there's something to learn from somebody who's done something awful, I think that we should take that opportunity.
I don't disagree with any of that. Do you think we can redeem any of these people we were just talking about today? Whether it's the soap, the human fat soap woman. What was her name? Anna. Anyone come across her?
Oh, I read about her. I don't know what her name was though.
Yeah, she would kill people. She had 17 kids. Only 4 of them made it past age 4. So she had a terrible life. She believed she was cursed. She believed that her favorite son, the one who lived to be the oldest, he was like 7 or 8, for him to keep surviving, she had to keep killing people. Whether it was because they were like the principal at his school or whatever, I didn't get into all the details. She had to kill them. And to get rid of the body, she would boil it in this super hot cauldron, and then human fat would rise to the top, and she would turn them into soap and give them to her family and friends.
That's really gross.
And then eventually there was so much stuff left over, she would get a little bit of curdled blood and stuff and turn it into cakes and feed it to people.
I read that.
Yeah, her kid, she's like, no, it's fine. My kid and I had some. I was like, oh, that's dark.
Something else is going on there.
I don't know. In that particular instance, that's a bit extreme.
Well,
I think
that's the most extreme, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if when you say redeem, I don't think like any. I mean, the only people who can forgive them are their victims and their families, and so that's not possible. But as far as rehabilitate, I don't think in our current system, no.
Mm-hmm.
I think the level of mental health care that would go into helping somebody be a functional human being in society is something that we're not at, and I can't recommend. And also, I think there's only so much you can do when someone becomes an adult.
So it has to be done early on. So
yeah, I think the intervention period is past.
Okay. So if we find out like that you're a psychopath and a serial killer, it's too late. We're going to have to give up on you.
But well, don't kill me. I don't believe in the death penalty. Just put me away.
Can we just put you away for a while?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
It doesn't have to be nice.
It can be like okay.
Yeah.
3-star hotel.
Yeah, that's fine.
So
well, as we wind down here, let's recap.
What did we talk about?
I don't remember.
Like torture and brutality. Serial killers. The top.
McDonald triad.
Yeah. DNA.
Oh, the McDonald triad. Good friends of ours. Listen to the podcast.
Proposition 69, the CODIS.
I remember the CODIS.
Yeah, the DNA index system.
We talked about the prototype theory by Eleanor Roche. I don't know if you guys remember. I wrote it in my notes. Maybe I didn't bring it up, but that's fine. We talked about it.
Yeah, we talked about
the FBI and Wikipedia. We talked about both of them.
The media's obsession with true crime.
They do. They love it. So do we, though. I think there's a reason. If we were to sum it up, there's a reason we love this stuff, right? Do you know what I thought about while I was watching all these videos? There's a reason you, and you, I'm pointing in the direction you guys might be in.
You are.
All love this stuff because it's a little bit a fantasy we play out where what would we do if there were no rules and we didn't care about people and there was God mode on and no one really got hurt in the end, but we could do whatever for a little bit.
That is not why I watch this.
Well, then why do you watch this? I'm serious.
Like, honestly, I'm obsessed with like how people respond to things. I'm just so interested in abnormal psychology. Like that me
So
and
am I,
you
but
and
who-
you were all born as babies and then we all went on very different paths and different things happened to us, sure, but like, you know, somebody can have the exact same thing. Someone else might have been raped and tortured and got pregnant at 14 and they didn't end up killing 7 men. What is the difference there? I'm fascinated.
So what do you think it is?
I don't believe in evil. So I think it has to be a mix between situation and genetics.
See, I don't believe in genetics. The very opposite of what you just said. I think there's no way my DNA would all scramble one way and it would say, you're going to turn out to be X and I will turn out to be X. I think everyone's very in control of their own destiny. Whether you're pointed in one direction more than the other or you have percentage points, you could argue all day, sure. But I think ultimately, I don't care what your DNA says. I think people who exhibit what we talked about, there's something about them that's either missing or extra. And I don't know what it is, and it fascinates me. And I'm drawn to it, and I want to know what they're thinking. And a little part of me wonders if they're just like, F it. What if there are no rules? What if there's no heaven? What if there's no hell? What if I'm just going to do whatever the flying F I want by the whims of my lust or my fancy or what my desire is? And this is ultimately what happens when we take away society and rules. And this is what people would turn out to be. Not that they're heroes or anything, but they're beyond the chains of the things I hold myself to. I hold myself to the rules. Other people's feelings, other people's emotions.
You're not a
sociopath. About
sociopath.
basic survival, right?
I'm not a sociopath. But what is the importance of that? The continued success of the species? Good for me. So sociopaths don't care about the continued success of the species? I don't know. Fascinates me.
Yeah, definitely.
Weird.
Deep shit.
Well, I think that covers it.
Yeah.
Well, we do. Yeah, we
You guys,
enjoy it.
just real quick though, before we wrap this up, do you have a favorite serial killer? I say favorite, not like, again, like you're gonna write letters or send your panties. I just mean like you have a favorite serial killer.
Dan, have you ever sent your panties to a serial killer?
No, I keep my panties to myself. I can imagine that, like, if there's somebody that's like so methodical that they can outwit the police and like they cover up all the tracks, there's something.
Jack?
I don't know about
Sexy about that? Dan loves
would
a
say
sexy
sexy.
overthinker. Dan loves a sexy overthinker. Yeah, it's sexy to you. I know it is.
Yeah, outwitting somebody is intellectually
Sexy.
stimulating.
That's
Intellectually
what I knew.
stimulating.
Sexy. Folks, he's going sexy.
So
Who you
I
got, Amelia?
can admire that.
Who you got? I know she's got someone in mind.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I like oscillate between, and it sounds cliche, but Bundy's just like so interesting. He's got so much levels in his story, but
Bundy's
I think,
Mr. Charisma. So.
between him and Dahmer, I think I'm going to be a basic serial killer fan and just say between Bundy and Dahmer.
Yeah, I was going with Dahmer. Dahmer's wild.
But I think the reason why Dahmer is appealing because he just seems so remorseful and sad, and Bundy is the opposite reason why I'm interested in him is because he's just like, what? I'm amazing and better than everybody, and that's why I'm doing this. And I think that's also equally interesting.
It is. No one can be that wildly different. So ultimately, we're drawn to serial killers, not necessarily because we love their crimes, but because we love their minds.
Yeah.
Those wonderful, beautiful, I don't know what's going on in there people. Can't figure them out.
So
Greedy
mysterious.
people we get. I don't know. I get that.
Yeah.
Jerks, I get. You know what I mean?
Crime of passions, you can understand.
Yeah, 100%. These people, I don't get it. And it's, you're right. Something crazy about it. Well, lock your doors tonight, folks. Close your windows.
Check under your bed,
Yep.
Check above your bed.
Check your
in the
back seat.
closet,
Grip your keys.
behind the curtain.
And thanks for tuning in and listening to us.
Yeah, we like you.
We like you. Again, we got Amelia from the AntiMatters podcast, Podbean, Bean Pod.
Something like that.
Did I say it right?
Podbean.
You can say it again. You can plug it. Plug
I
it.
mean, it's AntiMatters. You can find us on Twitter at shipnamedrake, or just like Google AntiMatters podcast. You'll find us. We're in.
Check it, gang. So, thanks for joining us, folks. We like you.
Good night.